السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. قال الله عز وجل في كتاب العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. وقال عز وجل في مقام آخر ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام أوذيت في الله ما لم يؤذ أحد وأخفت في الله ما لم يخف أحد أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Before we have a discussion about the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ and his forgiveness, we need to sort of highlight the first title of this is adversity. We need to understand that what were the adverse situations that the Prophet ﷺ had to deal with throughout his life to actually understand and appreciate his forgiveness, to appreciate his mercy. First of all, let's go back when he was a child. Let's go back even a little bit before that, when he was still in the womb of his mother. His father, Abdullah, goes on a journey to Syria. On his way back, he falls sick in Medina al-Munawwara because he had relatives over there. His mother is only 18 years old at that time. And before he was born, his father passes away. His mother is 18, she has no relatives in Mecca. He has no brothers and sisters. He's born as an orphan. And once he's born as an orphan, in those days, children were sent to the Bedouin in the villages so that they could get nourished correctly and have a good upbringing. She did not have any money to pay for someone to take him. So Halima Sa'adiyah comes along, radiyallahu ta'ala anha, and because she had no choice, there were no children left in Mecca, she says to her husband, it doesn't look nice that we go back to our city without any child in our lap, so let's just take Muhammad and see what happens. She takes Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then she comes back, he comes back, returns to his mother's lap when he's 4.5, 5 years old. He stays with his mom for maybe a year. And then on the way, one day the mother says to her, the person who should serve her and take care of her name was Baraka Ayman radhiyallahu anha. She says to her that I wish to go see the grave of my husband because I have not seen the grave of my husband. And then they travel on this journey to Medina al-Munawwara. And on the way back, 2 women and 1 child who was 6 years old. And we know the condition of children who are 6 years old. Small kids, I have a 6-year-old myself. On the way back, they stop at a place called Al-Abwa. And all of a sudden, the mother, who is now 23, 24 years old, Amina, she starts feeling sick. And she cannot move, she cannot speak. And Muhammad, who's a child, is saying, Ya Ummah, Ya Ummah. And this is the first time in her life that the mother cannot respond to her child. And he's saying, Ya Ummah, Ya Ummah. And there's no reply from the mother. And the mother looks towards Ayman and she says, Ya Baraka, Anti ummuhu ba'di. You are his mother after me. Because she realizes she cannot move forward. And at this place, in this rocky plains of Al-Abwa, in the middle of nowhere, Muhammad ﷺ's mother Amina passes away. And Muhammad ﷺ jumps on his mother. And he says, oh my mother, you cannot leave me. I have no brothers, I have no sisters. You have to come with me. Helpless. Ayman says, I grab Muhammad and I raise him and I say to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I am your mother. Don't worry. Many years later, brothers and sisters in Islam, about 50 years later, the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ were coming to Makkah al-Mukarramah. On the way to Makkah al-Mukarramah, they camped at a place. And secretly, the Prophet ﷺ left the camp. Now, everything I'm mentioning is in 3 books. Tarikh al-Saghir by Imam Bukhari, Tarikh al-Tibri, and Tarikh al-Khulafa by Suyuti, and Shuruhat of Hadith by Ibn Hajar Asqalani. Nonetheless, they stop over here at this place and the Sahaba see the Prophet ﷺ leaving his camp and going to a place where nobody was. The Sahaba had intense love for the Prophet ﷺ, and they did not want anything to happen to him, so they start following him at a distance. So the Prophet is a little bit forward and the Sahaba are a little bit behind. And they follow him. And all of a sudden the Prophet sits down. Sahaba sit at a distance. All of a sudden the Sahaba start to hear the Prophet crying. The Sahaba hear the Prophet crying. They had so much love for him, they started crying. All of a sudden the crying turned to sobbing, and his body was shaking. And only one person by the name of Umar radiallahu anhu, who was ashadduhum fi amrillahi Umar, who was a person who can control his emotions and sentiments, he gets up and he goes to the Prophet from the back and he hugs him tight and he says, Ya Rasulullah, it's okay, you don't have to cry. Imagine the friendship and the relationship that a man like Umar could get up, hug the Prophet and calm him down like his best friend. And he calms him down and says, you don't have to cry, Ya Rasulullah. And Umar says himself, he says, I could feel the Prophet relaxing in my arms. And then he says, after that we could not ask what happened, and we start walking away. And I say to him, Ya Rasulullah, why were you crying so much for? And he said, oh Umar, this is the same place my mother passed away many years ago. And I was sitting at her grave. I asked Allah permission, can I visit the grave of my mother? And He granted me permission. So I came here and I was thinking about my mother. And I was crying because I wish I had a mother to take care of me throughout my life. And then he said, oh Umar, I swear by the one who controls my life, if I was praying Isha Salat and I said Allahu Akbar and I started Surah Fatiha and my mother opened the screen and she said, Ya Muhammad, I would have said, Labbaik ya Ummah. And I went to her service. This is how he grew up. Then at 8 years old, the grandfather who took care of the Prophet ﷺ with so much love and compassion, he passes away. Somebody asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, do you remember your grandfather? Because you were a child and everybody talks so highly of him. And you know what he said? He says, I remember one thing about my grandfather. And that was when I was walking behind his funeral crying because he was leaving me. And then many years later, his uncle who took care of him, he passes away. The same year, his wife Khadija passes away. I was once in Philadelphia and somebody asked me to come visit their family. I go to the apartment, I sit down. As I sit down, this one 7, 8-year-old child sits in my lap right when I sit down. And he sits in my lap. I could hear a lady, a mother, crying behind the curtain. And the father sitting on my left saying to the mother, please don't cry, it's going to be okay. And then as the discussion starts, the mother says to me, Sheikh, there is a disease that these children have. There's 53 kids that have this disease, and it's when extra lipids come in your brain. And this disease has afflicted 53 kids in the world, and there's no cure to this disease. They all die. And among those 53 people in the world, 3 of them are my children. And 2 of them already passed away, and the 3rd one is in your lap. Now how, I was sitting there speechless. What kind of words can a person come up with to comfort this lady? But wallahi al-azim, the Prophet ﷺ was a person who was battle tested, went through every adverse situation a man could think of, that nothing could compare to the situation that he went through. So that is why the Prophet says, "Udhitu fillahi ma lam yu'da ahad." I have been put through difficulties and hardships and adversities that nobody in the entire world could come near it. So when she said that, the only thing that came to my mind was, imagine the Prophet ﷺ had to bury, he had 7 children, and 6 of them passed away while he was living. And he buried 6 of them with his own hands. 6. And today I'll highlight one of them, who was the eldest daughter, Zayneb radiallahu anha. When the Prophet ﷺ, at the Battle of Badr, when they were prisoners, one of them was the husband of Zayneb, Abdul As bin Wa'il, who at that point was not Muslim. So Abdul As bin Wa'il was told to give some ransom so you can be freed and go back to your wife. Abdul As bin Wa'il then tells his wife Zaynab, could you please send something? And Zaynab, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, takes her necklace off, the same necklace that her dear mother Khadija gave her, and gives it to a person to give to the Prophet ﷺ. When the necklace is presented to the Prophet ﷺ, he sees a necklace, فَرَقَّ لَهُ رِقَّةً شَدِيدَةً. The Sahaba say, right when he saw this necklace, he started to weep. And he remembered the days of Khadija. And he said, this necklace reminds me of Khadija. And then he asked the Sahaba, if you give me permission, I could send Abu al-As back to his wife, and I could also give this necklace back to my daughter. And the Sahaba said, no problem. And then he said to that person, he said, you know what? When you go back to Makkah, please send my daughter to me because I miss her. I want her to be with me. And he said, no problem, I'll do that. And the Prophet gave, in one hadith, he said, what a great son-in-law he was. He spoke and he spoke the truth. He promised and he fulfilled his promise. So he goes back to Makkah and he tells his wife, go to the Prophet ﷺ, your father, because I made a promise with him. They get ready to leave. She sits on her camel. At this point, she's 6 months pregnant. And she sits on her camel and he sends one of the servants with her. The Prophet ﷺ from Medina sends Zayd radiallahu anha and one other Sahabi to come meet them at the middle point so he could take them from there. Right when she leaves Makkah, one man by the name of Habbar ibn Aswad, he says, how could the daughter of the Prophet leave Makkah untouched, unharmed? So he goes and he strikes Zaynab while she was on the camel, and she falls off the camel and she immediately has a miscarriage. This is the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, and the child in the womb was the grandchild of the Prophet ﷺ. She turns back around because she could not travel anymore. She goes back to Mecca. She gets better, she recovers, and then she's sent to Madinatul Munawwara. In that same moon, brothers and sisters in Islam, in the 8th year of Hijri, the Prophet ﷺ would see her every single day and cry because she never recovered from that wound. And she passed away as a shaheed, as a martyr in this wound. And in Baqi' she was buried. And the Sahaba say that we did not have the courage to go in her grave because the Prophet was standing. Just picture this for a moment, brothers and sisters. The Prophet was standing in the grave and he was putting the dust and the stones properly, and nobody was helping him. And the Sahaba said we could not come down in the grave. And he just sat there and he was crying. And then and we were behind him. And then when he turned around, he was smiling and he had this radiance on his face. So somebody asked him, he said, Ya Rasulullah, you were crying so much when you put her in the grave, you came up smiling. And he said, when I was burying my baby Zaynab, I was looking at the walls of the grave and thinking how dark these walls will be. There's going to be no light in this grave, no one to take care of her. And I was thinking about this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel to me, and he said to me, oh Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this grave will be opened up for your daughter, and she'll be given Jannatul Firdaus to any hisab. When I was told this, I started to smile. And then I came up. In Makkatul Mukarramah, when the Prophet was Fath Makkah, a man comes to the masjid and he was veiled. He comes inside the masjid and the Prophet says, take your veil off. He takes his veil off and the Prophet says to him, Anta Habbarun? Are you Habbar ibn Aswad? And he says, Na'am. He says, Qatilu binti? The murder of my daughter? And he says, Na'am. He says, what brought you here? He said, Sami'na annaka rajulun kareemun afuun sakhiyun. We heard that you're a man who forgives. You're a man who takes the high road. You're a man that is generous with his soul. I have come to you to ask you to forgive me. Sahaba took their swords out. Ya Rasulullah, just give us permission to kill this person. And the Prophet says, Da'hu, leave him alone. He grabs his hand and he says, Inni lam ab'uth li'antaqima min ahadin, walakinni bu'ithu rahmatan lil alamin. I have not been sent down to take revenge from anybody, but I have been sent as a mercy. He forgives the murderer of his daughter and the murderer of his grandchild, and he accepts Islam. Brothers and sisters in Islam, then you look a little bit before that. The same person who took care of the Prophet all his life, Hamza radiallahu anhu, he gets martyred and mutilated in the battle of Uhud. Many years later, the killer of his uncle walks to the doors. And the Prophet says, Awahshiyun anta? Are you Wahshi? He said, Na'am, I'm Wahshi. Qatilu ammi, the one who killed my uncle. There were 70 to 72 martyrs in Uhud. The Prophet's uncle's body was put, one by one the shaheed would come and the Prophet would pray janazah. The body would be taken. Nobody touched the body of his uncle. 70 to 72 times the Prophet performed janazah on his uncle. His body stayed there. And then when Wahshi comes, he says, Awahshiyun anta? You're Wahshi? You're the one that killed my uncle? He said, Naam. He says to Wahshi, look at you. You're skinny. You have no power. Tell me how you killed my uncle. And Wahshi starts to cry. Says, Ya Rasulullah, do you really want me to tell you? I know you're not going to. And he says, the Prophet is crying. He says, no. Tell me how you killed my uncle. Tell me how you killed my uncle. And he explains it. And his Prophet is crying. And the Prophet says, Ghayyib wajhi ank. I love you, I forgive you, but don't come in front of me, because when you come in front of me, I'll remember my uncle. And every time I remember my uncle, it will hurt my feelings. One person from his ummah, by the name of Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahimahullah, he was pelted and whipped. Great scholar, great saint. And I'll highlight the quality of rahmah and forgiveness in adversity. He was whipped to a point where a person came to the Mu'tasim. And he said to Mu'tasim, he says, you know what? I have a track record that whoever I whip 10 times, before my 10th lash, he dies. So Mu'tasim said, listen, you whip him, and he dies, good. But if he remains alive, I'll free him. And at that time, Ahmad bin Hanbal was past his 60s. He whips him 10 times, he doesn't die. And then he's sent back to his house. One of his students, he comes to visit Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah at his house. He sees Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah on the floor grabbing a pillow in pain. He says, Kayfa anta ya imam? How are you feeling, O imam? And Ahmad bin Hanbal says, you know, those whips and those marks on my back were not a big deal. But the pain that I'm feeling because of this open wound on my lower back is 10 times more than the pain I felt when I got whipped. And I cannot move. And that student says, oh Imam, just give me a few moments. Let me go find out what's the best way of remedy. So he goes back into the prison. And the long story short, he finds out that this is an open wound. And the person in prison told him that this will infect his heart and he will die within 3 days if it's not treated. He said, how should you treat this? He said, you have to burn the wound. So he comes back to the house and he says to Imam, he said, oh Imam, I know how to treat this wound, but it's going to be very painful. He says, okay, I need this wound to be treated. He says, I have to burn this wound. He said, no problem. So Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal gets 2 pillows. He grabs onto one and he puts his knees onto one. And he bends over like this on the ground like this. And he says, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah ala ni'ma wa salama. Alhamdulillah ala iman. And he's just praising Allah, praising Allah. And finally that there was no anesthesiologist in those days where you could put you to sleep and you can go have this operation in your sleep. No such thing. So he takes his metal and he burns the wound of Ahmad bin Hanbal and he is going through pain. And the student says all throughout this process, this surgical procedure, he's making a dua. And the entire time he's repeating the same exact dua. After the whole procedure is finished and we covered him up and he got some rest, I asked him afterwards, I said, Imam, you could have made dua for anything. You could have made 15 different du'as. You made one du'a and you repeated it over and over and over again. And why did you make that du'a? Brothers and sisters in Islam, you know what du'a he was making? His du'a while he was going through that procedure was, Allahumma ghfir lil mu'tasim. Oh Allah, forgive Mu'tasim. The same person who put him through all those difficulties. Oh Allah, forgive Mu'tasim. Oh Allah, forgive him. Forgive him. And the entire time he's going through this procedure, he's just saying, Allahumma ghfir lil Mu'tasim. Allahumma ghfir lil Mu'tasim. And the student is beyond himself. He says, why'd you make dua for him for? You should have just left him. And Ahmad bin Hanbal, he says, what a beautiful statement he makes. He says, Wallahi al-Azim, I don't want that on the day of judgment, somebody else gets punished because of me. So I forgave him. I don't want nobody to get punished on the day of judgment because of me. So I forgave him. His son comes to him and he says, every person would come to Ahmad bin Hanbal and ask him for forgiveness. He says, I forgive you, I forgive you. His son Saleh asks him, he says, oh my father, how about those people who died before asking you for forgiveness? And he said, I forgave all of them. And then he mentions this beautiful hadith, and I will conclude with this. He says, why did you forgive all of them? He says, it comes in the Quran, فَمَنْ عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. And he says, I heard from somebody who heard from Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, quoting a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. He says that on the Day of Judgment, كُلُّ أُمَّةٍ تُدْعَى إِلَى كِتَابِهِ وَتَرَى كُلَّ أُمَّةٍ جَاثِيَةٍ. Every person will be on his knees, kneeling in front of Allah, and Allah will be giving them the book of deeds like this. He says, everybody on that day will be on their knees, إِلَّا مَنْ كَانَ أَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Except for that person, the Quran ayah means the one who forgives and reconciles. فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ, meaning Allah owes him back a reward. The reward, Allah owes him now. So on the Day of Judgment, everybody will be on their knees. Announcement will be made, only those stand up that have some reward that is owed to them by Allah. Somebody will ask, who are those people that Allah owes a reward to? Then the response will be, الَّذِي عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ. The one who forgave and reconciled. The one who forgave and reconciled. Brothers and sisters in Islam, today in our communities, how Allama Iqbal says, Tu bacha bacha ke na rakh ise, tera aina hai wo aina, ki shikasta ho to aziz tar, hai nigah aina saaz mein. He says, this heart of ours is like a mirror. And every mirror is only valuable when it's not broken. But the heart that you have is a mirror that's valuable when it's broken by the one who made the mirror, who's Allah. Ah nakar, labon ko si, ishq hai dil lagi nahi, सीने पर तीर खाए जा, आगे कदम बढ़ाए जा, यानी जुबान हाल से कह दे हाँ सतम खाए जा. He says, keep on moving forward in life. People will put you through difficulties. People will hurt your feelings. But the adversity that the Prophet ﷺ went through and he forgave could never be compared to the adversity that we will face in our lives. Today, a mother-in-law says something negative to her daughter-in-law. The daughter-in-law never forgets it for the rest of her life. Today, a daughter-in-law says something negative to her mother-in-law. The mother-in-law cannot forget it for the rest of her life. 20 years go by. And the in-laws don't. Why? Because, oh, she did this to me. Oh, and the families are being divided. And there's no love. Only if we had Abu Dujana, radhiallahu anhu, who's on his deathbed. فَوَجْهُ يَتَهَلَّلْ. And his face is brimming like the full moon. Somebody asks him, says, why are you so happy and joyful today? Which amal of yours do you have so much confidence in that because of this amal, Allah will forgive your sins and give you Jannah? And Abu Dujana, he was a person who participated in every single conquest with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a great Sahabi. He could have easily said that, you know what, I'm going to present Badr. I'm going to present Uhud. I'm going to present Khandaq. I'm going to present Bay'at Ridwan. But you know what he said? He said, Inna arja amali indi. ألا آذيت أحدا بلساني ولم يكن في قلبي غش لأحد. He said the biggest, the most confidence I have in any act of mine is the very fact that this tongue has never hurt anybody's feelings. And if anybody hurt my feelings, I never carried a grudge in my heart. I forgave them immediately. Brothers and sisters in Islam, if we could leave this gathering with this conviction, with this intention, firmness, that from today onwards, if somebody hurts me, I will forgive them. Not because they deserve my forgiveness, but I deserve to forgive them, right? And because the very fact that the world today needs people like the Prophet ﷺ who forgave, even though the person was the murderer of his daughter, the murderer of his uncle, the murderer of his potential grandchild, he forgave them in every single condition. We forgive for the sake of Allah. Every single time we hear a speech like this, somebody comes up to the Shaykh and says, MashaAllah, the speech was great about forgiveness, but Shaykh, trust me, that guy was crazy. He did something really bad to me. All right? Or my mother-in-law, you don't understand my mother-in-law. She's too much. You don't understand my situation. Is there any situation that could come near the situation of the Prophet ﷺ? So we forgive for the sake of Allah. Allah make us among those who understand this message. And don't think that I am an exception to this rule. We understand the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ in all adversities, in every single situation of his, that he just gave it up, right? How pija ayyam ki talkhi ko hans ke binasir, qudrat ne gham mein bhi maza rakha hai. He says that just swallow up everything that you have, all the difficulties, because trust me, there is joy in life with difficulties as well. Allah make us among those who forgive for the sake of Allah. Understand the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ in every situation he was. Allah make us among those who make our families like the families of the Prophet ﷺ. Wa akhu da'wana alhamdulillah alamin. Jazakallahu khairah.